Take Five really should not have been a hit. It's an instrumental track in 5/4 time. You can't really dance to it. It has no lyrics, and get this, almost half the song is a drum solo. The drum solo is over 2.5 minutes long. I don't know about you, but I usually hate long drum solos. And yet, Take Five became the first jazz single to sell over 1 million copies, and the album it came from, Time Out, spent more than 200 weeks on the Billboard charts. So what makes this track so unbelievably popular, despite the kinds of things that would normally make a song completely unsellable? Well, I have a few ideas, because the thing that makes this track work has everything to do with what Dave Brubeck plays on the piano. If this is your first time here, my name is Michael Clement. I am a pianist and composer who helps you become more creative and free at your instrument. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. So the first thing that we need to understand is why Take Five feels the way it does. Yes, it's in 5/4 time. That's probably the most famous thing about this song. And it is an odd meter, but usually when people think of counting in 5, they might think of like each measure will just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that's really not how 5/4 time really feels. It actually feels like a mix between two different time signatures. Let me show you why. So most music is built in groups of either 2s or groups of 3s. And if I were to write Take Five in just 2/4 time, or really 4/4 time, but usually we think in groups of 2s, it would sound something like this. And there have actually been some people who have made arrangements of Take Five in 4. And they change the melody a little bit, and they make it sound like this. The thing about this 2/4 time is it feels very grounded. Most music that is in 2/4 or 4/4 feels really solid. And that's really the sense that we get when this pattern is in 2/4. Of course, I've got this in a different key. I've got it just a half step down so it's easier to read. But this is how the groove would feel if it was just in 2/4 time. Right? It feels kind of boxy, right? But if we went to 3/4 time, this is how it would feel. Notice how the 3/4 time feels much more light and almost like we're dancing a little bit more than the boxy 2/4 time. Even if we took it a little bit further with the third example that I have here, this is another way to play in 3/4 time that has a little bit more of that feeling of lightness, but it also has a little bit more syncopation that's more characteristic of the jazz style. So we have something like this. And you can already feel the Take Five time feel starting to shape up a little bit, right? So, if we just do it in 2/4, it sounds like this, very boxy. And then if we do it in 3/4 time like this, it feels much more dance-like, almost like we're flying a little bit. We're just floating over the time rather than feeling like it's really strict. Now, Take Five does something that's halfway in between both of these. We get one half of the measure that feels like this really light and airy 3/4 time, and then we have the second half of the measure that grounds us a little bit. And this, I feel like it sounds a little bit more like we're skipping, like we have one part of it that's we're flying a little bit and then we ground, and then we fly a little bit and then we are grounded again. So listen to how this feels. And notice how those first 3 beats in the measure feel like they're light and airy, and then the last 4 beats kind of ground us a little bit, just like I was saying earlier. And this is how it usually looks in 5/4 time. Notice how I have the measure still grouped up into 2 parts, so you can just see how that shapes up. But really, we have a 3/4 measure and a 2/4 measure right next to each other, and it creates this kind of hybrid feeling between 3 and 2. And it's not really feeling like it's in 5. It's really feeling like it's a group of 3 and then 2, and it's alternating. Right? So if we take that and we now put it into the key that the song is actually in, we'll end up with this. So we're just going 1/2 step up. I know that it's a lot of flats. We're in 6 flats now with E flat minor, but everything is just 1/2 step up. So we started out with this, and then we go up a 1/2 step to, so if you've made it this far in the video and you're able to play that pattern in 5/4 in the original key, which is E flat minor, I want to congratulate you because you have actually learned 90% of the song. That's right, Dave Brubeck spends almost 90% of the song playing exactly this pattern. He doesn't deviate, he just sticks to this exact pattern. And why is that interesting? Well, the genius of this track is not that it's really complex in a lot of the ways that jazz is usually complex. It doesn't have a lot of improvisation in the piano part, and most of the song is just repeating this same idea. But like we mentioned before, this song is in 5/4 time. It's not inherently danceable. It's not really something that people would be normally used to hearing. So, one of the reasons why I think that Dave Brubeck played this so much throughout the track is to help the audience feel the groove even more than they normally would. Usually in a rhythm section, the bass and the drums will they'll stick to a relatively conservative groove, especially the bass, and then maybe one hand of the drums as well as the piano are really trying to give variety to the track. But the thing about Take 5 is that it's already very unique. It has this unique groove, and if there's nothing to kind of ground us with what the groove is, people might lose interest and it might go completely over their heads. So the genius of this track is that much of the track is this same groove repeated over and over. It's really the foundation for the rest of the track. When the drum solo is happening and the drums are playing a bunch of other things, the bass and the piano stick to this very simple groove. So while a lot of our time, our role as pianists is divided into 2 parts, remaining steady with the time, as well as creating a lot of variety in our chords and our voicings, this is a great example of a track where the piano is really just sticking inside the role of a rhythm section player, trying to just keep everything solid. And Dave Brubeck does a great job in this track of doing just that, and it makes the whole track. So if you're comfortable with playing that 1 measure pattern repeated, a great way to practice this would be to turn on the original recording and just play along with Dave Brubeck for the 90% of the track that he's playing this pattern. And then whenever there's something that's vastly different, namely the bridge, which we're going to do next, anytime there's a variation, you can just lay out and just jump back in when it's time to go back to that 1 measure pattern. Really, it is truly 90% of the tune that we're playing this one pattern. So spending time playing along with the recording would be a great way to practice this part of the tune. Now, of course, with all of that repetition in the piano and in the bass, there does come a time where there needs to be more variety, and that happens at the bridge, and it just happens twice in the song. It happens near the beginning and then near the end when we finally come back to the melody. Now, this is what the piano is playing when we finally come to the bridge. And notice how I have the parentheses around the second chord. That's because he doesn't stick to as clear of a formula when he plays this section. Sometimes he leaves out that second chord, and then sometimes he puts it in. I just put them there and some options for voicings that you could play there, just so anything that you play will work. But you can feel free to try it with that parenthesized chord or just leaving it out. So that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1, right? So it's the same pattern. We have the 3 side, which is 1 and 2 and 3, and then we have the 2 side, which just goes 1, 2. So together it makes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 1. And then it repeats that same 4 measures again, and we just have a different chord that kind of sets us up for getting back into our 4 measure pattern. So I'm going to play it once starting from here. And then we're back to our pattern. So if you've gotten to this point of the video and you've learned all of the A sections, which is about 90% of the tune, and then you've learned the last 10%, which is what's on the bridge, then you're ready to go ahead and play Take 5 along with the Dave Brubeck recording on Timeout. Now, this is how I would recommend practicing this first. Just getting really comfortable with the recording. And this is really, there's a reason why the tune was so popular as a quartet tune. The piano does not play the melody. It's the saxophone playing the melody. And I think it really is best when the piano just really learns how to groove. So I would recommend practicing it that way first. Now, you might want to go to the next stage, or I wouldn't even call it the next stage. It's just a different way of playing it. If you want to play it on your own or with a group with you playing the melody, there are some different ways that we could play it. So I'm not going to be covering the melody in detail today because really the piano part is the patterns that Dave Brubeck plays. But I will show you how you could play the melody with your right hand and then try to have your left hand playing the different parts. So the main thing that we're going to need to do is to modify the 2-hand comping with just one hand. So I would recommend doing something like this. If you can reach the 10th, then do something like this. And what I'm doing here is I'm doing root, 5th, and 3rd. And then I'm doing the 5th and the 7th for the B flat minor chord. And then I would play the melody with my right hand on top of that. And notice how even in the melody, there's some places where the melody comes in and plays the 3rd for us. So we end up filling out the chord with the 3rd, and then we have the 7th, the 5th, and the root in our left hand. So once again, and notice how here the melody goes down to the 7th, and I'm just leaving that out in my left hand. So right? And that's really how I would play it if you can reach that 10th. If you can't, you can go ahead and just play it like this. And just do the 3rd and the 5th right here in a close position. If you have a smaller hand, this would be a really easy way to get around that problem. So that's how you would play the A sections, and then let's go on. I'll show you how you would play the B sections. So usually if I'm playing this with a trio or with a group, when I get to the B sections, I'm not worried so much about keeping that groove going. Of course, if I'm playing with the quartet, I want to keep it going with the parts that I showed you earlier, like this. But when we only have trio, we're already not playing it like the recording. So a lot of times, if I'm playing with the trio, I'll do something like this. And then I'm kind of back to what I was doing before. So really what I'm doing is I'm playing the melody in the right hand, and then I'm just playing 4-note chords. These are just 7th chords. C flat major 7 or B major 7. In the sheet, I wrote it as C flat major 7 just to fit with the key signature. But it's really B major 7, and then B flat minor 7, and then A flat minor 7, and then back to G flat major 7. And you could do inversions of these, but really I'm not worried about trying to fit it in with the groove that was going before, because we're already not playing it like the recording. I'm really just trying to support my melody in the right hand with the left hand. So now you know why Take 5 feels so good when you listen to it, and how also you're going to practice it with the recording to feel that rhythm, to make sure that you can get really comfortable with that 5/4 time as you practice it, and then hopefully later as you play it with a group. This is a great example of how the piano can be a very supportive rhythm section instrument, playing along with the bass and drums to create something really magical. So if you do want to go to the next step and you want to get more rhythmic fluency, you want to get comfortable with working with both hands, I'd recommend checking out my course, The Jazz Piano Launchpad. We have full units on how to think about comping so that when you go to your next jam session, you'll know exactly what to do. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and check out my beginner tutorial for the jazz standard Autumn Leaves. I'll see you in the next video.